Welcome back. It's the Democracy Day, and we're still looking at the economy on the present administration. And my guest here, Mr. Udemezue, is still in house here. Thank you very much for sticking on.
Always my pleasure.
Well, the present administration's growth strategy is anchored on the ERGP. So how would you assess this ERGP and, of course, the macro economy so far?
The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is a fantastic master plan to enable this government recover its position. So I want to congratulate the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, dear President Buhari, and of course his very strong, articulate, and intelligent Vice President, Professor Udemezue. I think putting that document together, it showed that, they were at some point beginning to understand that we had to do something about making this economy prosper. Fighting corruption is good, but that is not a principal economic objective of its own. Every nation pursues a number of objectives. One is to keep its economy on a growth path. Two, to ensure that employment is provided for people, those who have the energy to work and who are looking for work. Three, to ensure price stability, inflation, okay? And then to also see that there's a positive balance of payment outcome for this country. That we export and we import, but we must make sure that we export as much as, if possible, what we import. To ensure that we produce what we consume and we don't import so much. And we have enough foreign exchange to feed importation demand. So that our own currency will have some reasonable value. Remember the dollar was at 160 or so, 165 or so when this government took over. And now we're at about 360. So, and then of course to achieve equitable distribution of income, to narrow the gap between those who have and those who don't have. These are the objectives. Now, fighting corruption is meant to be institutional. When you're doing the right things, you're governing properly, you are making sure that things are run, the police runs the way it should run, the military are run professionally, no politics, and the ministries of government, just like, I always, forgive me, but I always want to call, the efforts of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, because we seem to have neglected that woman. The best way to fight corruption was what that woman did to make sure that every government payment on contracts were more done on cash basis. It was electronic payment. They also brought out the issue of IPPIS, that's a payroll system where a lot of ghost workers were eliminated.
Yeah, but this administration came up with the TSA.
The TSA was already on the table. In fact, it has been approved by Jonathan, but President Jonathan lacked the political will to implement it. So, thumbs up to President Buhari, who said this document must be implemented. So, as they came in, within a few months, it was implemented. That was an idea that was already built. Of course, government is continuity, so we can't say it's not a good development for the government. So, for them to have implemented it was a very big plus for this government. The TSA also eliminated all kinds of redundancies and inefficiencies where government was borrowing its money, even through the treasury bill issuance and all of that. So, so these are the objectives that every nation must, pursue. And it is based on that the ERGP came up. And the target for us was to see that we produce what we consume and not depend a lot on, foreign goods. To also see that we put our economy on a growth path and ensure that we, build human capital. If you look at all of this, I think there are a lot of efforts being made to make sure that these things happen. Whether the efforts have yielded result, yet or not, we are going to see.
Well,
but you heard the ERGP is...
You heard the president say our foreign reserve has grown, the inflation rate is trending downwards.
Okay, let me give a word on that. And I have always said this. This nation, Nigeria, is not about this current government. All the governments that have come in the past, we have become very unteachable. We have become incorrigible. We have become careless in risk management. We know that this country sits on a gunpowder, on that basic single, horrible risk of being, swung around by movement in oil prices. Every time there's an oil boom, everything is good, and we say we're doing well. So to what extent can you hold this government liable, accountable to the growth we're seeing, if not that oil price has just gone up? It's about $80 now per barrel. So it's not the effort of governance. It's not, transparency and accountability and fiscal discipline, proper spending and infrastructure that has brought about this growth. It's just because oil price has gone up. And that's one thing we must learn in this country. Until we move away from this, from that cycle. No government can impress me. If we grow only when oil is doing well, and if for any political reason, I mean OPEC, Russia, Iran, all those geopolitics going on, for any reason, if we can't get it right, at that global level, and the price drops tomorrow, this nation will start bleeding again, almost to death. You saw how it was so rough on this government, well, unfortunately for them, they had the most sustained lull in oil prices. And that's why we got to where we got to. So for how long can we continue to become unlearnable and unteachable set of people, or economic managers? What can we do to truly, not lip service, diversify this economy away from oil? Number one is that even the oil itself, have we done everything possible to add value in the whole value chain? How can a country like Nigeria be spending 1.4 trillion? That's, if you look at our revenue as a country, that's almost, 40% of our total actual revenue. We're spending that on fuel subsidy, even though they haven't owned up to it. Why is it so impossible for a country like Nigeria not to have working or workable, refineries? Do you know the amount of money we spend? Of course, that's the figure showing in our subsidy. Apart from other things that we import, that we can actually naturally, why would we as a nation, an emerging market that has refused to emerge, how can we at this point not have workable refining or cracking petroleum or crude oil? It's not a rocket science. It's being done in Cote d'Ivoire, it's being done in Ghana, and other, close by. Who are these people? Who are these vested interests who have refused to allow this country build its refinery? Until a president does that, I will not take that person as a serious person. How can we be importing oil at this point? Again, the issue of agriculture. What have we done to invest massively in particularly post-harvest technology? How can we bring in cassava or cocoa raw and export it raw? The real effort that will show that we are serious, like we're doing in tomato now, trying to see how we can package our tomato, can it and then send away. The seriousness I will see in that area is any government that will put the right infrastructure and equipment in place to ensure that whatever we bring in, we're able to process them and package them, in a standard, a package that will be acceptable to Asia, America and Europe in terms of export. That we add value, and by processing these things, we create employment. This is not rocket science.
Now, talking in this agriculture, a lot of people have hailed the anchor borrowers initiative of the central bank. Mm-hmm.
Now, that's also the point I'm making. If you remove the efforts of the central bank, by the way, is the custodian of monetary policy in this government, in every government, while the executive, anchored by the Ministry of Finance, should anchor fiscal policies. Well, we thank God, and that's why you see where politics and how do I put it now? Competent expertise, where they are different. So the central bank, that's one blessing we have in this country up to now, that somehow, thankfully, that's why the politics being played, that in the Central Bank of Nigeria, we've had a history of competent people running that desk. Even though we have had similar thing in the Ministry of Finance, but somehow the executive downstep has not allowed the ministers of finance to execute the things that will help this country work. So we almost always rely on monetary policies of federal government, central bank, to make things happen.
So we haven't achieved that
to the point that they had, what you call, policy, exhaustion. Now the anchor borrower program is an effort from central bank to see how they could make finance available to farmers. But finance alone does not solve any problem in the economy. The program is running, but if you listen very well, you hear a lot of criticisms and issues that people are having with it in terms of the credit risk that's involved in it, how the money should come back, whether people take it as a gift from government and all of that. It has its own challenges, but thankfully that program, when it was started, did a lot in encouraging a lot of interest in agricultural activities, which has also led to some extent to some new forms of production or productivity that's giving way to a lot of exports in that sector. So it's kudos to central bank. But we need to see our Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Audu Ogbe, and the Minister of Finance to see how fiscal policies could be directed strategically towards agriculture to make farming and farm development and post-harvest technology attractive to SMEs, and to find a way beyond providing finance, which the Anchor Borrowers Program is doing, to find a way to, if possible, institute, farm training centers around the country. Something is being done in that direction, but it's not yet noticeable. We have to provide centers in every state where young people can be, even instead of sharing 5,000 naira in the welfare, you can deploy that into farmer education. For those who are in the village who don't, who haven't gone to school at all, you can teach them on snail farming, on cassava farming, on all kinds of crop production, animal husbandry. We can invest strategically. The issue of social welfare, which the president mentioned in his speech, by the way, it is their policy, and in economics, people don't always agree. For me, that's a waste of resources. Because to start with, who are these people being given this money? Do we know how they were selected? Or is there another way of sharing the national cake? People come up with a list of ghosts or goats and sheep and all kinds of names, and they say they need support. You don't. How much can 5,000 naira do to a person's life who's unemployed? Take that amount of money and give him training. Teach him how to fish, and don't give him fish. This government needs to be more strategic. And the worst thing now is that with the oil price coming back high, we seem to have subpedaled on everything economic diversification and on agricultural development and all of that. And that's very sad. Before now, when the oil price was so low, every single day in the news, in the main media, print, electronic, even government quarters, you hear a lot about economic diversification. Have you heard so much noise about that in the past few months? Why? Because the money is available again. Nigerian politics is so dangerous because what people go there to do is to serve self, appropriate resources of the country to themselves, and not to provide selfless, dutiful, responsible, and committed service to this nation. And that's where we must start. The argument has been made, do we need professional politicians to handle this in the affairs of this country, or do we need professionals in politics? By professional politicians, we mean people who have done almost nothing in their lives. They have not successfully run any business. They have not done anything meaningful, but by sheer luck, maybe from Togre, somebody brought them in, they become chief of staff, they become governor, then senator, and all of that. They remain in the political power corridor all their lives, adding no value to the system. And some of them even can step down from, jokingly, after being a governor, somebody can even accept commissionership position just to be in power. Because there's something else they can do with their lives. Somewhere around the world, you see people who, after being maybe U.S. Secretary of State or whatever, they go back to the university, go back to their offices, their chambers, to continue to add value to life. That's not in Nigeria. You see political appointees who just drop and they drop out. INEC chairmen who drop out and you don't see them again. Because either they get corrupted in the process, or they become so soiled they cannot speak again. They can't share their experiences. It's horrible. We need leaders in this country, and that's where, if time allows us, when we discuss the political process, that's where professionals must begin to show interest, and all the obstacles we put in our, like in banks, they will tell you, you must not belong to any political party or even be involved in politics. In most companies or countries, organizations, private enterprises, they curtail or almost ban politics. How do those companies expect quality human beings to rule their affairs? And mind you, when we have professional politicians who are not coming to serve us, who are coming to serve themselves, if you have them, if they're always there, how can our businesses prosper? So I urge every professional institute, every organization, private and public, to encourage to even spend in voter education, electorate education, and encourage people. We're not saying go and be speaking on behalf of a bank, your political views, and all of that. But you can belong to, a party or hold your card and be given time to go and vote. Banks and other companies, oil and gas companies, manufacturers must note that if we have bad governance, we cannot attract the quality capital and, resources that they require to prosper. So we must all show interest. And I thank God for the social media that has come upon us and the amount of awareness it has brought on this nation.
All right.
So with that, you see that political education and, awareness is increasing gradually.
You just have to hold your thoughts there again. I will still get back to you. We'll look at the issue of infrastructure and the power that the president talked about. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. To stay with us.